Alright, a few weeks ago, a user named PHValue left me a comment and said, I would like you to do a video on the resolution of conflict, whether it be between one person and another or between one person's own actions and behavior versus their own philosophy. So, the issue there is, I've been thinking about this. It's great to have somebody else ask the question. Gives a kind of focus if somebody else can ask the question. And it's sort of the thing. I have lots of views on conflict, both in just regular life and philosophy and abstractions. And so that's the kind of thing where, if there is an example of conflict in the world, I can just, turn on the camera and have quick access to how I think about the conflict in whatever I'm talking about. So it's easy on hand. On the other hand, in terms of really describing conflict in itself, where the topic is conflict and we make statements on that, I realize that there are just so many dimensions to conflict, like in this question, between your actions and behavior versus between different people, between versus the fact that we have these sub-personalities, that on one hand we want this, and on the other hand we want that, and that conflict. There's all these different dimensions, and it's very easy for it to meld together when we're talking about it. So I was thinking, really, I want to make, a series of different videos, each focused on one where I would keep to a certain concept of conflict, an area of conflict when I discussed it. Okay, so this video is going over that list in no particular order. Okay, one topic is the similarities between internal conflict and external conflict. Okay, this issue is that, I believe the mind can be modeled and should be modeled as made of subpersonalities. So what we consider now as a personality where someone, what's their opinion on the subject, as if they have just one. Well, most people are conflicted. We see the pros and cons, and in a way, this is like personalities with different opinions in us that will discuss the issues. I think it's important to organize our mind this way also just because we are organized into a society, and basically we're going to end up with the social structure that mirrors this internal structure. So like if that conscious part of us, that powerful conscious part, wants to be the dictator, we end up supporting a dictatorial system, even if we think we don't. Just subliminally we'll align with the dictatorial system, and since everybody will be aligned that way, that's what we'll get. I mean, in other words, I think people's inhibitions internally, where one part of their mind sort of abuses and oppresses another part, is related to why we have that in our social system. We have one part abusing another part. We don't have the ability to just be distributed. Okay, the similarities between those two, therefore, are that we use a metaphorical similarity in both directions. We consider different people just as having different thoughts that have to communicate and get aligned, or can just stay separate to some degree. And we also do the metaphor the other way, where we take groups of people interacting and how that works, and we apply it to our mental model for internal conflicts. There's the difference between subjective versus objective fact conflict, or actually what I'd written here is subjective versus intersubjective fact conflict. So when there's different facts from different points of view is basically the issue there. There's the belief in consistency and continuity, which are expressed in logic and mathematics. We have mathematical conflict or logical conflict. There is the conflict between abstract descriptions and the things themselves. When it comes to philosophy and behavior, you have hypocrisy, and it's another internal conflict sort of issue. But it doesn't have to be interpreted as conflict. That's kind of an example of an apparent conflict, I think. But anyway, I would get into that. These would all be different videos. There is also the difference between avoiding conflict and resolving it. One of the things I liked about this question, as PH Value asked it, is that he used the word resolution. I find myself accidentally using the word avoiding. How do you avoid conflict? Avoiding conflict is just various ways of running away. There's various ways of just being quiet and letting the conflict pass. I think in our practical lives that's useful, and we all know techniques for that, okay? But in terms of something serious in a community that has to be resolved, or the online debate where the point is to be willing to engage and support free speech and therefore free listening. So, yeah, resolving it is what we're really interested in. Finding agreement by expanding scope. Now, this is one of the techniques for resolving conflict, is you expand the scope. So, we can think of, so a group between, if there's a conflict between two villages, if they both expand the scope of what they're considering, they're saying, what's right for my village? The other person's thinking, what's right for my village? And that's in conflict. Well, if you raise up and think, well, what's right for both villages? That's the kind of question that leads to, oh, hey, there's something we can get twice as much benefit for both of us as I thought I was going to get by destroying it. Okay, there's another version of that is finding agreement by narrowing the scope. Okay, you can also look at a narrower aspect of the problem so that you realize that you only disagree on some little detail. So you think your conflict is that your village wants water and there isn't enough to go around, and the other village wants water, and so you think that's what you agree on, and really what you disagree on is, when you look at it closer, is how to build the well, and if you build the well right, you could get enough water for both of you, or whatever. I don't know, I'm winging that metaphor, but anyway. Okay, also I have a subject called the precepts of differences. In other words, dichotomies, really, that we make, and that invent conflict. Objectivist versus subjectivist, right? I believe that the one is made of the other. So that dichotomy, that difference, it creates a conflict that we have, and we can see that conflict in our argument over that as a subject. There's skepticism versus dogmatism. I do believe that there is a true conflict there, and difference, a very sharp distinction. There are the dichotomies, where there's two kinds of people, all sorts of dichotomies, and the purpose of dichotomies. So yeah.